Hi guys, it's symbolic to be in London because exactly 100 years ago, Sir Ronald Fisher was the first guy that analyzed large sets of data sets. In that time it was focused on corp data, and his main problem was that he didn't have enough data, so he designed experiments. So 100 years later, we have too much data. But still, some of his methods are still very much relevant. So thank you for inviting me. I will talk a little bit about what we do in Lambda. It's our laboratory of AI, machine learning, business, and data analytics. We try to cover those aspects that comes from the industry with real data and still require some work in the lab and in order to promote innovation. Now, when we talk about innovation in an innovation conference, one thing is to try to understand what drives innovation. And if you look at those companies, you realize that there is a very clear trend here. In the beginning, those companies that were focusing on oil, energy, automotive, they're all existing in the physical world. Then later came those companies that opened the digital gate, first the hardware companies and then the software companies. And now when you talk about innovation, you talk about companies that can bridge this gap. And this is why AI is so important. They can take a real problem, real physical problem, transfer it to the digital space, solve it, and then map back that solution to the physical world. Okay, so Amazon is one example, combining a search engine with the best or the largest supply chain, Alibaba, Alphabet, Uber, and needless to say that Mobileye and Waze, and even this great example that we saw today of Orcam, you can really feel that those AI algorithms needs the digitization data in order to give those feedback in the physical world. And this is exactly the vision that we had when we established the Digital Living 2030. It's a joint project with Stanford University, supported by the Correct Foundation for $5 million that will take 5 years. And what we plan to do is to cover aspects or trigger some of those challenges that we will all face 10 years from now. And what we tried to do is to divide it into 3 different buckets. So research around environmental infrastructure, smart cities, IoT, and so on. Those that are related to social organization and the new way that people will interact. And the last one, our individual well-being. And I will try maybe to just give you a quick example for the type of research that we are trying to accommodate in each of these buckets. So environmental infrastructure, we talk about smart cities. We know that we have those autonomous cars and actually autonomous robots that will move around. This is how people envision mobile robots more than 100 years ago. And this is one of the first example of an electric dog that actually moves by a beam of light. What we want to do is to take the same concept and create a mechanism where different robots can move autonomously and independently in a city in order to find some target. And I know it was not planned, but Mark Gazit, I don't know if he's here, was talking about this great movie, Minority Report. I want to show you really a glimpse of this clip, if you remember those mobile robots in the city, searching for suspects and so on. It's okay. I mean, if none of you have seen it, I recommend it. So the idea is that those small robots can move around the city. And they can do many things. So if I go to the application, you can think about autonomous cars looking for their next customer. So they want to be close to it. Or autonomous ambulances that would like to be close to an area where an accident could happen. So this is, for example, a real map where that indicate those areas that are prone for accidents and might involve some casualty, and you would like those autonomous vehicles to be there. You can talk about police agents, firefighters. You can talk about small robots that will move in pipelines looking for leakage. You can think about location-based services. And all of them will need some kind of mechanism that work in the physical world based on this heat map, where the target is located. And today we have so many inputs in a smart city to create this heat map. So we can take your transportation and traffic and temperature, social network, cellular data, and use all of it to create a sort of a probability map where those robots can operate. And this is the scheme. I apologize for the mathematics, but what these robots need to do, they need to take some kind of an action where they activate those sensors. Then they need to take those probability maps, each creature, each robot for itself, and update it. Then after they updated it with the new information, they need to take into account that the target might be moving, so they need to update it again. And then they move to the area that is most close to the one that where the target will be, and they take another measure. So this is a sort of mechanism that we know already. It happens in nature, and if you can run this clip. So it happens in nature with ants and animal foraging that are looking for food, and these creatures are, and maybe they can just run it, guys, over there in the background. Okay, so those creatures that represent ants, they move. Each creature by itself has its own probability map where the food exists, and they send each other signals, what they found. Whenever they are located in an area that if the food was not found, of course the probability is mapped to another region, and this is the way that they operate. And although it's as a team, they do things that are completely fabulous and complicated. Each agent by itself is quite simple and can be operated by a very simple computer on top of any robotic infrastructure. So this is one such example, and indeed these are the ants moving. So let's move maybe to another example, and in this case we talk about an infrastructure that will enable us to operate, and we talk about now the personalized, the well-being part of this research. So this is another research with Professor Bambos from Stanford and a large team of students where we try to activate in a very specific way set of sensors that will measure different body functions. And the idea is that whenever you have to activate those sensors, whatever they are, you need to take into account the accuracy and the power. There is a Innovate trade-off here, because if you activate the sensors all the time, you will lose a lot of energy, and you will actually create a lot of communication because everything will be sent to the cloud. At the same time, you don't need it, because what you really want to do is to see how the patient status or state is deteriorating over time. So there are very specific cases when you want to activate different set of sensors, and all of it is done while you are learning how this, in this case, how this situation is evolving at that specific a patient. And what you see here is an example of, based on a diabetes case. This is a state of a customer, of a patient, and you see that is deteriorating over time. And the dotted line are based on our sensors. So you see that pretty much with some delay, you can measure exactly what is the level of, in this case, sugar in this patient. And what you see in the bottom is exactly the control scheme, which sensor to activate. Finally, as a last example maybe, things that are related to social organization or the way that we make decisions. We all heard a lot about wisdom of the crowd, And we know that it's a very good mechanism when you ask independent individual to make an assumption and you collect all of it in order to get a better estimate. So if I show you that sign over there and ask each one of you to estimate the size and I will average it, probably I'll get a very good estimate of the actual sign size. However, if the crowd is biased by external information, if the crowd is not independent, or if you have a group of experts, think that we talk about a medical case, a group of experts that suddenly think about a different direction, the regular measure of majority rule or wisdom of the crowd mechanism won't work, and you need some kind of measurement to provide opportunity for outliers and for small groups of people that might be expert in that area in order to preserve this variety and be able to assess different direction. And this can go to medical cases and even to politics if you want. And what you really need to think when you deal with wisdom of the crowd is also the legal and the ethical aspect of such research. Are you allowed to ignore a group of people because they are different from the majority? And things that right now seem trivial to us, whenever you program it in an AI agent, a priori you need to take it into account. And this is why this field is so interesting, because it involves so many inputs and will affect our lives in many, many different ways. So thank you very much. And it's a pleasure for someone that deals with data science to see the business community coming. I hope when the trend is moving, you won't leave the data scientist alone. You'll stay with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.